to be here. It's nice to see all of you. This is a good crowd tonight. My name is Brooks Mitchell. I'm a candidate for the Corporation Commission. I'm running against Bob Anthony. My wife Caroline and I have two daughters, Charlotte, who just finished her junior year of high school yesterday, and Laura, who just finished her 8th grade year yesterday. Caroline and I have been married for 19 years. I'm a licensed CPA, had my own private practice for 15 years, but I did that full time, focused on small business. And as a CPA, I've learned and I know how much government regulations can impact businesses and how we lead our everyday lives. I've just recently concluded 9 years at the Corporation Commission, where I was the first person in the history of the agency to have served as a commissioner's aide to Commissioner Jeff Cloud, the director of the Petroleum Storage Tank Division for 2.5 years, and for the last 6 years, I was the director of administration. So I ran the day-to-day operations of the agency, managed 430 employees, and a $40 million budget. Worked very closely with the commissioners and gained an appreciation for how hard the job is and how much energy it takes to oversee the entire agency. For those of you that may not know, the Corporation Commission is the main regulatory agency in the state. Oil and gas, other utilities, retail gas stations, some underground pipelines, and trucking. So it's a very diverse agency and a very busy agency. For example, 29,000 applications were filed last year, and over 10,000 commission orders were issued. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of activity. It is vital that a commissioner be able to work with the legislature, with other agencies, with the citizens of Oklahoma, and especially the other two commissioners. And I think I have an excellent record of doing that. For example, before I came to the agency in 2003, the legislature had, or the agency had a difficult time of getting their statutes passed, getting changes made to their statutes. In the 8 years that I worked with the legislature, not one state senator voted against a commission-sponsored bill. And in the House, all but 2 bills received at least 95 of the 101 possible votes. The other 2 bills still passed overwhelmingly. This race is the only statewide race on the ballot, and we decided in the Republican primary on June the 26th. And the beauty of this race is that we both have commission experience. Bob Anthony's been there for 24 years. I was there for 9 years, ran the agency for the last 6 years. So let's kind of compare the records. I just told you what my record was working with the legislature. Well, Bob Anthony has never cultivated any of those relationships. And I think for a statewide elected official or for the head of another state agency, I think it's very important that you have relationships with the legislature because that's where all your authority comes from. They approve your statutes, they approve your rules of practice, which are used to further define your statutes. So it's vital that you do that. I think it's also a much different job now than it was in 1988 when my opponent was first elected. I think the commissioner right now, it requires more hands-on experience, more hands-on, the ability to do things more hands-on. An example of this, in 2003 when I became the director of the Petroleum Storage Tank Division, that division manages what's called the indemnity fund. This is a fund that's used to clean up the spills from underground storage tanks, the gasoline spills. Well, at the time, there was a big scandal regarding that fund, and in the newspapers, it was talking about $60 million of fraud and abuse with this program. Well, I became the director. I went down and did my investigation, and what I found out was there wasn't $60 million of fraud and abuse. What you had was, you had a situation where the previous management was selectively paying claims. So those companies that were getting paid were happy. Those companies that weren't getting paid or were getting paid at a steep discount were very unhappy. And this has been a problem that's been going on for several years now. And in many cases, the interest on these claims exceeded the principal. Well, Bob Anthony was fully aware of this and did nothing. I went down and cleaned this up, settled these cases within 6 months of being there on terms that were very favorable to the fund, no additional interest, and the claimants were all happy. So it was a very good settlement, something that a commissioner that would have been hands-on would have done. Governor Fallon and the legislature are going to continue to restructure and consolidate government. And I think the Corporation Commission will play a role in that, being the lead regulatory agency in the state. Another example of how important it is for a commissioner to work with the legislature is back in 2004, the legislature created what's known as the Trucking One-Stop Shop. Before this, there were 3 agencies that had a piece of the regulatory pie: the Department of Public Safety, the Oklahoma Tax Commission, and the Oklahoma Corporation Commission. Well, the legislature decided that things weren't working well at the Tax Commission, so they needed to move it somewhere else. Well, they moved it to the Corporation Commission. Well, Bob Anthony needed to be at the table when this legislation was being drafted, because even though the trucking one-stop shop on a whole has been very successful, there are other efficiencies for the agent, for the industry that could be achieved. However, the bill we got was one that was filled with ambiguities that we're still trying to unwind 8 years later. So it's important that commissioners participate in the drafting of this language so you can get the right bill the first time. You know, an example of how to do this is Commissioner Dana Murphy, last year, House Bill 1909 was the horizontal drilling bill for the state of Oklahoma. And she recognized back in the summer of 2010 that this bill had all the potential to have lots of contentious issues and be very difficult to get passed. She brought all of the parties to the table in the summer of 2010, worked tirelessly for several months, drafting the legislation, and then by the time the legislature reconvened in 2011, they had all the differences figured out. They had it all worked out. The bill passed easily in the House and Senate, was signed by the governor, and this has spurred a lot of the horizontal drilling that's going on today, which is good for our state. It creates jobs, brings money to the state coffers. It's a great situation for Oklahoma. And I applaud Commissioner Murphy for her effort in doing that, and that's what you have to do as a commissioner today. Bob Anthony's would have taken the 30,000-foot view of this. He would have said, you all go work something out, and when you come back with something, you know, then come and see me. Well, okay, having worked with the legislature for 8 years, that's a recipe for a bad bill that's very contentious and goes nowhere. I applaud Commissioner Murphy for what she's done. Commissioners are elected to make tough decisions. They're elected to cast their votes. And as a commissioner, I will cast a vote. And you will always know my reason for why I cast a vote. You don't get a pass on these things. You have to pass. You have to vote for it or against it. You know, an example of this is not too long before I left, there was a case involving Centerpoint Natural Gas, and Bob Anthony concurred in part and dissented in part. And he was asked by his colleagues on the bench, well, which is it? Well, he said, read my opinion and you'll figure it out. Well, you know, we never could figure it out, and you had to get a legal opinion on how to cast a vote, but it's very difficult to do that. And I'm told I'm out of time, so I'll wrap it up here in just a few seconds. I would appreciate your support on June the 26th. Last Monday was my birthday, and so I am 50 plus 1. So on June the 26th, if I can match my age at the voting booth and get 50% plus 1, I'll be the next commissioner. So I would appreciate your support, and I've got a couple of questions to answer here. So. Is there a need for more or less regulation regarding fracturing in oil and gas production? Well, I think Oklahoma has the best regulatory program in the nation. Hydraulic fracturing has been going on in this state for about 80 years, and we have no instances where any groundwater has been contaminated. So it is a safe process. Like anything else, it has to be done correctly, and I think our regulatory program ensures that it's done correctly. And I think our regulatory program is so good that it can stand up to all of the EPA scrutiny. And we don't need the EPA here because all they want to do is make it harder for us to do business. So to answer the question, I think it's fine right where it is as far as Oklahoma is concerned. Another question. Is there any hard evidence or research that correlates or connects the process of fracturing to the earthquake activity in Oklahoma? Before I left the agency, I had heard a couple of presentations made by the Geological Society at the University of Oklahoma, and they have said that since the fracturing occurs at levels beneath where the earthquakes have occurred, they can't tie the two together. So they've looked at it, they continue to look at it, they continue to study the data. They're the scientists, I'm not. So until they say something different, I'm going to have to rely on what their findings are. So, you know, right now there's no scientific correlation. Is Oklahoma doing all it can to facilitate the passage of the XL pipeline? And if not, what should be taking place? Well, this is a federal issue, as you know, and the southern portion of the Keystone Pipeline, I believe, will be approved shortly if it hasn't already been approved. And for Oklahoma right now, the southern portion is the more critical portion because we have a glut of crude oil in Cushing that we can't move out fast enough. And so what this has caused, it's caused that our producers are getting paid $15 to $20 per barrel less than what the market rate depending on the day. So it's bad for our producers, it's bad for our royalty owners, it's bad for our state. So the southern leg of the pipeline is what's critical. I'm glad to see that that's moving forward. The northern leg is a little more contentious. I'm hoping we have a new president next year, and under a Romney administration, I think that will happen quickly. But if I'm elected as commissioner, you know, I will be very visible and very vocal about the fact that this pipeline needs to be approved. There's no reason not to approve it. The objections some people are raising are just based on junk science and just, you know, partisan politics. It has nothing to do with reality. So I will be a strong proponent for it if elected. And then the last question, can you explain the duties of a corporation commissioner and what qualifies for the office? Well, kind of touched on a little bit of this earlier. I'm a CPA, so I have a good financial background, and I've spent 9 years with the agency and participated at the highest levels, so I understand what goes on at the agency. The Corporation Commission is the only elected body that meets every workday in the year. Other boards and commissions, I meet once a week, once a month. We meet every day, so it's important that you be there. My opponent hasn't been showing up for work much. He's been campaigning instead of doing his job first. All the other commissioners that I served under, when they were up for re-election, they got their work done and then they went to campaign. So I believe that I have the experience and the knowledge to be a corporation commissioner. And these are the end of my questions. So again, I appreciate the chance to speak tonight. I appreciate everybody's attendance, and I appreciate your support on June the 26th. I'll be here after the meeting to answer any other questions that you may have. Have a good rest of the evening and enjoy the rest of the forum. Thank you.